Hello, 8th grade, and welcome to another exciting lesson today. Go ahead and please get out your language arts notebooks and turn to a clean sheet. Let's go ahead and review our objective, or our I can statement today. Our I can statement is, I can identify specific events and lines in dialogue that reveal character traits, as well as identify the impact of specific events on the story plot. Last time we read Chapter 1 of Animal Farm. This time we're going to be reading Chapter 2 of Animal Farm. In this chapter, I want you to answer the following questions in Google Classroom on a Google Doc in paragraph form with 5 to 6 sentences for each answer. Your questions are the following. Number 1, what is the effect of Old Major's death? And number 2 is, what event is the ultimate catalyst for the revolution? Join me now as we read Chapter 2 of Animal Farm. 3 nights later, Old Major died peacefully in his sleep. His body was buried at the foot of the orchard. This was early in March. During the next 3 months, there was much secret activity. Major's speech had given more to the intelligent animals on the farm a completely new outlook on life. They did not know when the rebellion preceded by Major would take place. They had no reason for thinking it would happen within their own lifetime, but they saw clearly that it was their duty to prepare for it. The work of teaching and organizing the others fell naturally upon the pigs, who generally recognized as being the cleverest of the animals. Preeminent among the pigs were 2 young boars named Snowball and Napoleon, whom Mr. Jones was breeding up for sale. Napoleon was a large, rather fierce-looking Berkshire boar, the only Berkshire on the farm. Not much taller, but with a reputation for getting his own way, Snowball was a more vivacious pig than Napoleon, quicker in speech and more inventive, but was not considered to have the same depth of character. All the other male pigs on the farm were porkers. The best known among them was a small fat pig named Squealer, with very round cheeks, twinkling eyes, nimble movements, and a shrill voice. He was a brilliant talker, and when he was arguing some point he had a way of skipping from side to side and whisking his tail, which was somehow very persuasive. The others said of Squeaker that he could turn black into white. These 3 led enamored Old Major's teachings into a complete system of thought, to which they gave the name animalism. Several nights a week after Mr. Jones was asleep, they held secret meetings in the barn and expounded the principles of animalism to others. At the beginning, they met with much stupidity and apathy. Some of the animals talked of the duty of loyalty to Mr. Jones, who they referred to as Master, or made elementary remarks such as, "Mr. Jones feeds us. If he were gone, we should starve to death." Others asked such questions as, "Why should we care what happens after we are dead? Or, if this rebellion is to happen anyway, what difference does it make whether we work for it or not?" And the pigs had great difficulty in making them see that this was contrary to the spirit of animalism. The stupidest question of all was asked by Molly, the white mare. The very first question she asked Snowball was, "Will there still be sugar after the rebellion?" "No," said Snowball firmly, "we have no means of making sugar on this farm. Besides, you do not need sugar. We have all the oats and hay you want." "And shall I be allowed to wear ribbons in my mane?" asked Molly. "Comrade," said Snowball, those ribbons that are you so devoted to are a badge of slavery. Can you understand that liberty is worth more than ribbons?" Molly agreed, but she did not sound very convinced. The pigs had even a harder struggle to counteract the lies put about by Moses, the Tame Raven. Moses, who was Mr. Jones' special pet, means favorite pet, was a spy and a tale-bearer, means telling stories. He was also a clever talker. He claimed to know the existence of a mysterious country called Sugarcane Mountain, to which all animals went when they died. It was situated somewhere up in the sky, a little distance beyond the clouds, Moses said. In Sugarcane Mountain, it was Sundays 7 days a week, clover was in all seasons around the year, and a lump of sugar and linseed cake grew on the hedges. And the animals hated Moses because he told tales and did no work, but some of them believed in Sugarcane Mountain, and the pigs had to argue very hard to persuade them that there was no such place. Their most faithful disciples was 2 cart horses, Boxer and Clover. These 2 had great difficulty in thinking anything out for themselves, But having once accepted the pigs as their teachers, they absorbed everything they were told and passed it on to the other animals by simple arguments. They were unfailing in their attendance at the secret meetings in the barn, and led the singing of Beasts of England, with which the meetings always ended. Now, as it turned out, the rebellion was achieved much earlier and more easily than anyone had expected. In past years, Mr. Jones, although a hard master, had been a capable farmer. But of late, he had fallen on evil days. He had become much disheartened after losing money in a lawsuit, and had taken to drinking more than was good for him. For the whole days at a time, he would lounge in his Windsor chair in the kitchen reading the newspaper, drinking and occasionally feeding Moses on crusts of bread soaked in beer. His men were idle and dishonest. The fields were full of weeds, and the building wanted roofing, the hedges were neglected, and animals were underfed. June came, and the hay was almost ready for cutting. On Midsummer's Eve, which was a Saturday, Mr. Jones went into Willington and got so drunk at the Red Lion that he did not come back until midday on Sunday. The men had not milked the cows early in the morning, and then they had gone out rabbiting, without bothering to feed the animals. When Mr. Jones got back, he immediately went to sleep in the drawing-room sofa with the news of the world over his face, so that when evening came, the animals were still unfed. At last they could stand no longer. One of the cows broke in the door of the store shed with her horn, and all the animals began to help themselves from the bins. It was just then that Mr. Jones woke up. The next morning, and his 4 men were in the store shed with whips in their hands, lashing out in all directions. This was more than hungry animals could bear. With one accord, although nothing of the kind had been planned beforehand, they flung themselves onto their tormentors. Jones and his men suddenly found themselves being butted and kicked from all sides. The situation was quite out of their control. They had never seen animals behave like this before, and this sudden uprising of creatures whom they were used to thrashing and maltreating just as they chose frightened them almost out of their wits. After only a moment or two, they gave up trying to defend themselves and took to their heels. Means they got out of dodge, went far away. A minute later, all 5 of them were in full flight down the cart track that had led to the main road, with the animals pursuing them in triumph. Mrs. Jones looked out of the bedroom window and saw what was happening, hurriedly flung a few possessions into the carpet bag, and slipped out of the farm by another way. Moses sprang off his perch and flapped after her, croaking loudly. Meanwhile, the animals had chased Jones and his men out onto the road and slammed the 5-barred gate behind them. And so, almost before they knew what was happening, the rebellion had successfully carried through. Jones was expelled, and the manor farm was theirs. For the first few minutes, the animals could barely believe in their good fortune. Their first act was to gallop in a body right round the boundaries of the farm, as though to make quite sure that no human being was hiding anywhere upon it. And then they raced back to the farm buildings to wipe out the last traces of Jones's hated reign. The harnesses room at the end of the stables was broken into. The bits, nose ring, the dog's chain, the crewel's knives, with which Jones had been used to castrate the pigs and lambs, were all flung down the well. The reins and haulers and blinkers, the disgrading nose bags, were thrown onto the rubbish fire, which was burning in the yard. So were the whips. All animals catered with joy when they saw the whips going up in flames. Snowball also threw onto the flame the ribbons with which the horses' manes and tails had usually been decorated on market days. Ribbons, he said, should be considered as clothes, with which the mark of a human being. All animals should go naked. When Boxer heard this, he fetched a small straw hat which he wore in summer to keep the flies out of his ears, and flung it on the fire with the rest. In a very little while, the animals had destroyed everything that remained of them of Mr. Jones. Napoleon then led them back to the store shed and served out a double ration of corn to everybody, with 2 biscuits for each dog. Then they sang Beasts of England from end to end several times running, and after they had settled down for the night, they slept as they had never slept before. But as they woke at dawn as usual, the sun remembering the glorious thing that had happened, they all raced out into the pasture together. A little way down the pasture there was a knoll that commanded a view of most of the farm. The animals rushed to the top of it and grazed around them in the clear morning light. Yes, it was theirs. Everything that they could see was theirs. In the ecstasy of that thought, they gamboled round and round, and they hurled themselves in the air with great leaps of excitement. They rolled in the dew, and they cropped mouthfuls of sweet summer grass, and they kicked up clods of black earth and snuffed its rich scent. Then they made a tour of inspection of the farm and surveyed with speechless admiration the plowland, the hayfield, the orchard, the pool, the spinnery. It was theirs. They had never seen these things before, and even now they could hardly believe that it was their own. Then they filed back into the farm building and hauled in silence outside the door of the farmhouse. That was theirs too, but they were frightened to go inside. At the moment, however, Snowball and Napoleon butted the door open with their shoulders, and the animals entered in single file, walking in the utmost care for fear of disturbing anything. They tiptoed from room to room, afraid to speak above a whisper, and gazing with a kind of awe at the unbelievable luxury, at the beds with the feathered mattresses, the looking-glass, the horse-haired sofa, the Brussels carpet, the lithograph of Queen Victoria over the drawing-room mantelpiece. They were lust coming down the stairs when Molly was discovered to be missing. Going back, the others found that she had remained behind in the best bedroom. She had taken a piece of blue ribbon from Mr. Jones' dressing table and was holding it against her shoulder and admiring herself in the glass in a very foolish manner. The others reapproached her sharply, and they went outside. Some hams hanging in the kitchen were taken out for burial, and a barrel of beer in the scullery was stowed with a kick from Boxer's hoof. Otherwise, nothing in the house was touched. A unanimous resolution was passed on the spot that the farmhouse should be preserved as a museum. All were agreed that no animals must ever live in there. The animals had their breakfast, and then Snowball and Napoleon came together again. "Comrades," said Snowball, "it is 6:30, and we have a long day before us. Today we begin the hay harvest, but there is another matter that must be attended to first. The pigs now revealed that during the past 3 months they had taught themselves to read and write from an old spelling book which had belonged to Mr. Jones's children and which had been thrown on the rubbish heap. Napoleon set 4 pots of black and white paint and had led the way down to the 5-barred gate that gave on the old main road. Then Snowball, for it was Snowball who had the best handwriting, took a brush between his 2 knuckles and his trotter, painted out Manor Farm from the top of the gate, and in its place painted Animal Farm. This was to be the name of the farm from now onwards. After this they went back to the farm building, where Snowball and Napoleon set for a ladder which they caused to be set against the end of the wall of the big barn. They explained that by their studies of the past 3 months, the pigs succeeded in reducing the principles of animalism to 7 commandments. These 7 commandments would now be inscribed on the wall. They would form an unalterable law by which the animals on Animal Farm would live forever after. With some difficulty, for it was not easy to be a pig to balance himself on a ladder, Snowball climbed up and set to work, with Squealer a few rungs below him holding the paint pot. The commandments were written on the tarred wall in great white letters that could be read 30 yards away. They ran thus, the 7 commandments. Number 1, whatever goes upon 2 legs is the enemy. Number 2, whatever goes upon 4 legs or has wings is a friend. Number 3, no animal shall wear clothes. Number 4, no animal shall sleep in a bed. Number 5, no animal shall drink alcohol. And number 6, no animal shall kill any other animal. And number 7, all animals are equal. It was very neatly written, and except with that friend was written friend, and one of the S's was wrong, the wrong way around. The spelling was correct all the way through. Snowball read it aloud for the benefit of others. All the animals nodded in complete agreement, and the cleverer ones at once began to learn the commandments by heart. "Now, comrades," cried Snowball, throwing down the paintbrush, "to the hayfield! Let us make a point of honor to get the harvest more quickly than Jones and his men could ever do." But at this moment 3 cows, who seemed uneasy for some time past, set up a loud lowing. They had not been milked for 24 hours, and their udders, which were almost bursting. After a little thought, the pigs sent for buckets and milked the cows fairly successfully, their trotters being well adapted to this task. Soon there were 5 buckets of frothing creamy milk, at which many of the animals looked with considerable interest. "What's going to happen to all that milk?" said someone. "Jones used sometimes to mix some of it in our mush," said one of the hens. "Never mind the milk, comrades," cried Napoleon, placing himself in front of the buckets. "That will be attended to. The harvest is more important. Comrade Snowball will lead the way. I shall follow in a few minutes. Now, forward, comrades! The hay is waiting." So the animals trotted down to the hayfield to begin the harvest. And when they came back in the evening, they noticed that the milk had disappeared. So, go ahead and please, once again, in a Google Doc on Google Classroom, answer the following 2 questions in paragraph format. What is the effect of Old Major's death? And what event is the ultimate catalyst for this revolution? Join me on Friday when we delve into Chapter 3 of Animal Farm. Stay tuned.